Hello guys, welcome to Proxima What Ifs. So in this video, we will see, what if Rimuru went in my MHA verse and fell in love with Momo? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. The Azure Anomaly. The air in the unforeseen simulation joint crackled with a unique brand of terror. It wasn't just the fear of death, but the chilling realization of powerlessness. Class 1A of UA, high school, supposed prodigies and heroes in training, were scattered, outmatched, and facing the grim reality embodied by the creature standing in the central plaza. Shota Aizawa, pro-hero Eraserhead, was a master of attrition and ambush. He fought not with spectacle, but with brutal efficiency. Yet, against the hulking purple beast known as the Nomu, efficiency was irrelevant. His quirk, Erasure, was useless against a creature whose strength seemed to be a simple, physical constant. Aizawa's elbow snapped with a wet crunch, followed by the shattering impact that drove his face into the unforgiving concrete. The sound echoed in the horrified silence of his students watching from afar. Izuku Midoriya, crouched behind a fountain's ledge with Tsuyu Asui and Mineta Minoru, felt bile rise in his throat. Every fiber of his being screamed to move, to use one for all, but he was paralyzed. The gap in power wasn't a gap, it was a chasm. The villain orchestrating the chaos, Tamura Shigaraki, scratched his neck with long, decaying fingers. His voice was a rasp that scraped against the nerves. "It's over, Eraserhead. You're cool and all, but you're not the main boss. Nomu, finish him. Let's make all MHA really despair when he finds his little students and favorite teacher splattered all over the entrance." The Nomu raised a monstrous fist, a hammer blow ready to extinguish Aizawa's life. Time seemed to stretch, each millisecond dripping with dread. Then, the air changed. It began not with a sound, but with a sensation, a sudden, piercing pressure drop that made everyone's ears pop simultaneously. A high-frequency whine followed. Like 1,000 tuning forks struck at once, rising in pitch until it felt like a physical spike being driven into their skulls. "What now?" Shigaraki hissed, his scratching becoming frantic. "Kurogiri, did you invite more guests?" "No," Tamura Shigaraki, the mist-like villain, Kurogiri, replied, his yellow eyes narrowing. This is not our doing." Above the central plaza, directly between the Nomu and Aizawa, reality buckled. It didn't tear or rip, it folded in on itself. A point of light appeared, impossibly bright, before expanding into a shimmering, azure disk about 10 feet wide. It spun lazily, throwing off sparks of energy that dissipated harmlessly before hitting the ground. The light wasn't warm or inviting, it felt ancient and sterile. Like staring into the heart of a distant star. From this disk, a figure stepped out as casually as one might step off a curb. The figure landed softly on the stone ground, creating no sound. The portal snapped shut behind them, leaving an echoing silence and the lingering scent of ozone and something indescribably clean, like fresh snow on a mountaintop. It was a person of average height, slender build, and features that possessed an almost ethereal androgyny. They wore simple black trousers, sturdy boots, a white tunic, and a long, deep blue scarf that seemed to drink the light. Their hair was a striking silver blue, cascading down their back, but it was their eyes that held everyone captive. Golden, almond-shaped eyes that swept across the scene with an expression not of fear or aggression, but of mild, analytical curiosity. This was Rimuru Tempest. For a fraction of a second, Rimuru's internal world was a storm of conflicting data. Alert. Emergency dimensional translocation detected. Analyzing spatial coordinates. Failed. Resonance with home dimension. Severed. Connection to central magical network. Minimal. All subordinates. Unreachable. The voice of Seal, his ultimate skill and partner, was calm as ever. But the implications were staggering. He was cut off. Isolated. Lost. The experimental magic circle Veldora had been testing hadn't just malfunctioned, it had thrown him across realities. A flicker of panic, rare and unwelcome, tried to surface. He suppressed it instantly. Panic was a luxury a leader could never afford. First, assess the situation. His gold eyes took in everything in less than a second. The large dome structure, the varied environments, fire, Water, mountains. The individuals present. A group of terrified teenagers, several dozen hostile individuals exuding malice. One heavily injured man in black, and the two central figures. The man covered in disembodied hands radiated a palpable aura of decay and instability. The large purple creature radiated nothing. It felt like a tool. Who the hell are you? Shigaraki demanded, his voice cracking with irritation. Another NPC. Did you glitch into the game? No, it doesn't matter. Kill him, Nomu. Kill them both. The Nomu, a creature of pure obedience, processed the command. It abandoned Aizawa and turned toward the new arrival. Its speed was astonishing, breaking the sound barrier as it closed the distance instantly. Fist cocked for a blow designed to shatter mountains. Midoriya screamed, "Look out!" Rimuru didn't flinch. He watched the approaching fist with detached interest. Analysis complete. Target. Biological golem. Designated, Nomu. Possesses high-level physical strength, super regeneration, and shock absorption. Cognitive functions. Minimal, operating solely on direct commands. Energy signature suggests multiple conflicting power sources forcibly integrated. So, it's a manufactured puppet. Strong, but mindless, Rimuru concluded. A blunt instrument. The fist, capable of leveling buildings, was less than an inch from Rimuru's face when he finally moved. He didn't dodge or block. He simply raised his right hand, palm open. The moment of impact never came. A small, swirling vortex of pure darkness, no larger than a dinner plate, materialized in front of Rimuru's palm. The Nomu's fist plunged into it and vanished. The creature's momentum carried its entire arm forward, followed by its shoulder, torso, and head, all being drawn into the void without resistance. There was no blood, no gore, no sound of tearing flesh. It was a perfect, sterile consumption. In less than 2 seconds, the terrifying monster that had defeated Eraserhead was gone, absorbed entirely by Rimuru's skill, Beelzebub. Rimuru lowered his hand, brushing a speck of dust from his sleeve. He looked at Shigaraki and offered a small, disarming smile. That was quite the welcome wagon. Now, would you mind telling me where exactly I've landed? Silence. Utter, profound silence. The dozens of low-level villains scattered across the USJ stared, jaws agape. The confidence that had fueled their invasion evaporated, replaced by a primal fear. The thing that had been their trump card, their guarantee of victory against All Might himself, had just been deleted from existence by a pretty stranger in fancy clothes. Shigaraki began to tremble, not with rage this time, but with something new. His scratching became violent, tearing skin from his neck. Cheat code. That's impossible. He cheated. Kurogiri, that's a bug. The final boss can't be beaten by a starting level player. This isn't fair. This isn't fair. Tamura Shigaraki, we must reassess, Kurogiri warned, his misty form flickering nervously. The newcomer's presence felt fundamentally wrong, an anomaly that defied the natural laws of their world. Rimuru sighed. I see a calm discussion isn't on the table. Unfortunate. He let his gaze drift over the remaining villains. You all seem to be interrupting a class field trip. As someone who values education, I find that rather rude. He took a single step forward. The action itself was a signal. The spell was broken. Get him. A villain near the entrance shrieked, firing a volley of energy blasts from his fingertips. He's just one guy. Rimuru didn't bother looking at him. He simply continued walking toward Shigaraki. The energy blasts veered off course midair, as if hitting an invisible wall, and slammed into the ceiling far above. Magic sense active. Trajectory analysis complete. Wind manipulation applied. He's fast. Surround him. Another villain yelled, rushing forward with 4 arms, each wielding a rusty pipe. Rimuru raised 2 fingers. Skill. Sticky steel thread. The air around the 4-armed villain thickened. In an instant, he was bound head to toe in razor-thin, incredibly durable threads that emerged from seemingly nowhere. He toppled over like a statue, unable to move a muscle. Panic set in. The villains turned to flee, scrambling over each other to get to the exit. Rimuru showed no malice, only efficiency. A wave of his hand sent a pulse of non-lethal energy, a controlled release of haki, across the plaza. Dozens of villains collapsed instantly, unconscious. Others found their feet suddenly encased in solid earth, courtesy of elemental manipulation. Within 10 seconds, every single remaining villain in the central plaza was incapacitated, neatly bundled, and completely unharmed. Rimuru stopped, now standing only a few yards from Shigaraki and Kurogiri. He looked past them at Aizawa, who was bleeding on the ground, and frowned slightly. Your methods are sloppy. You rely too much on brute force and intimidation, and you have no exit strategy for when a stronger opponent appears. Your leadership rating is F-. Shigaraki let out a guttural scream of pure frustration. Kurogiri, get us out of here. Retreat. Retreat now. He pointed a shaking finger at Rimuru. I'll remember you. I'll find a way to kill you. I'll break your cheat codes. You damn NPC. Kurogiri immediately enveloped Shigaraki in his warp gate. Before the mist could close completely, Rimuru spoke again, his voice cutting through Shigaraki's rage. One more thing. The hands you wear as trophies. They're a sign of weakness, not strength. You're trying to borrow conviction from the dead because you lack any of your own. The words struck home harder than any physical blow. Shigaraki froze, his eyes widening behind the hand covering his face. Kurogiri's warp gate snapped shut, leaving behind only the echo of Rimuru's clinical assessment. Rimuru turned his attention to Aizawa. He knelt beside the injured teacher, his hand glowing with a soft, green light. He placed his palm over Aizawa's shattered elbow. The complex fractures and depulverized bone rapidly reformed under the influence of restorative magic. It wasn't perfect healing. He couldn't regrow limbs instantly without more cost, but stabilizing critical injuries was simple. Aizawa, drifting on the edge of consciousness, felt the agonizing pain recede into a dull throb. Midoriya, still watching from behind the fountain, let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. He healed him. Just like that. Who? What is he? Across the facility, in the flood zone, the situation was less dire but equally tense. Momo Yaoyorozu, Kyoka Jiro, and Denki Kaminari had successfully dealt with several villains, largely thanks to Kaminari's indiscriminate discharge. Now, however, they were cornered by a handful of more resilient foes on a small boat, with Kaminari mentally short-circuited and drooling. All right, little rich girl, a villain with shark-like features sneered, your electric friend is out of juice. And pointy ears here can't do much up close. Just surrender quietly. Jiro gritted her teeth, holding her earphone jacks like daggers. Don't count on it, fish face. Momo's mind raced. Her quirk, creation, was incredibly versatile, but it required time, concentration, and knowledge of molecular structure. Under pressure, a debilitating wave of doubt always crashed over her. I need to create an insulator to protect us, then a high-voltage battery to recharge Kaminari. Or maybe a sonic weapon to counter their approach, but what if I choose wrong? What if the material isn't strong enough? What if I'm too slow? This hesitation, this fear of imperfection, was her constant battle. Well, do something, Yaomomo, Jiro urged, casting a nervous glance back. Momo took a deep breath, pressing her palms together. Right, I just need to concentrate. No need to strain yourself. A calm voice said from directly behind the villains. The shark man spun around. Who? GLK. Before he could finish the word, the silver-haired stranger from the plaza was standing there. The villains didn't even have time to register surprise before a wave of gentle pressure washed over them, and they slumped to the ground, fast asleep. Rimuru looked at the three students. Kaminari gave him a vacant thumbs up. Jiro stared, wary and amazed. Momo, however, looked at him with an intense, almost academic curiosity, her fear momentarily forgotten. You are safe now, Rimuru said, his tone polite. He glanced at the complex blueprint diagrams that had flickered in Momo's mind, which he'd perceived with magic sense. Then he looked at her hands, which were still pressed together. Your power, he stated simply. It's fascinating. You aren't just transmuting matter. You are pulling atoms from lipids and converting them into complex molecular structures based on informational blueprints stored in your mind. Momo blinked, completely thrown off guard. No one had ever described her quirk with such scientific precision. Yes, that's essentially correct. I call it creation. Rimuru tilted his head, a fitting name, but I sense a bottleneck. You hesitate because you fear an inefficient conversion ratio, or that the structural integrity won't match the theoretical model. You believe a single mistake invalidates the entire attempt. Momo felt her cheeks flush. It was as if he had read her innermost thoughts and insecurities aloud. How could you possibly know that? Creation magic is a high-level art, Rimuru explained, a faint, encouraging smile touching his lips. He held out his own hand. A small amount of blue light swirled in his palm, coalescing first into base elements, then forming intricate bonds. In seconds, a perfect, miniature mechanical bird sat on his hand. It chirped, flapped its wings, and took flight, hovering in the air between them. Quote, "The secret isn't just knowing the form of the object you wish to create. It's understanding its essence. You don't need to perfectly replicate every atom. You need to impose your will on reality and command it to become what you envision. Your ability isn't limited by physics, it's limited by imagination and conviction." Momo stared at the mechanical bird, mesmerized. The concept he presented was revolutionary. It shifted the burden from perfect encyclopedic knowledge, which she possessed but struggled to apply under pressure, to willpower and conceptual understanding. He wasn't just powerful, he was incredibly insightful. Who are you?" Jiro finally asked, lowering her jacks. Before Rimuru could answer, a tremendous boom echoed from the entrance. The doors burst open, and a towering figure stood silhouetted against the daylight. "I am here." All Might had arrived, his signature smile fixed in place. He scanned the USJ, ready for a cataclysmic battle. Instead, he found silence. Dozens of villains were tied up, asleep, or otherwise neatly packaged across the facility. His colleague, Aizawa, was injured but stable, already being attended to by 13. And in the center of it all stood this unknown individual, calmly chatting with 3 of his students. All Might's smile wavered, replaced by utter confusion. What exactly happened here? The debriefing room at UA was sterile and windowless. Rimuru sat comfortably in a metal chair, sipping a cup of green tea that Nezu, the principal, had provided. Across the table sat Nezu himself, All Might in his skeletal form of Toshinori Yagi. Aizawa, arm in a sling, but otherwise recovering rapidly thanks to Rimuru's potion Midnight and Present Mic. The atmosphere was thick with tension and unanswered questions. "So, let me reiterate to ensure my understanding is correct," Nezu said, his small paws steepled. "You claim to be from another dimension. You arrived here via an uncontrolled dimensional rift caused by a magical experiment gone awry. And in your world, you are a national leader." "That's a simplified version, but yes," Rimuru replied easily. He had decided on partial transparency. Lying a creature with a quirk called high spec was pointless. My nation is called Tempest. It's a place where many different species, humans, monsters, and everything in between, live together in cooperation. I serve as their king." Toshinori coughed, a small speck of blood appearing on his handkerchief. "A king? You took out that Nomu in an instant. A creature designed specifically to kill me. And why? You subdued over 70 villains without causing a single casualty. That level of power, King Rimuru, is frankly terrifying." "Power is a tool, Toshinori-san," Rimuru said, setting down his cup. "Its wielder determines if it's terrifying or reassuring. I chose not to kill those individuals because they seemed more misguided than truly evil. Except perhaps for their leader, who clearly had some deep-seated psychological issues." Aizawa spoke up, his voice rough. "You call them misguided? They were here to murder All Might and kill children. Your leniency might be seen as naivety here." Rimuru met Aizawa's gaze evenly. "I've dealt with far worse than disgruntled anarchists. I've fought demon lords, rogue heroes, and entire empires. I assure you, my assessment of threat levels is quite refined. They were not a significant threat. They were a symptom of a larger problem I do not yet understand." Nezu's whiskers twitched. This being, Rimuru, was a perfect paradox. He possessed the power of a god but spoke with the calm pragmatism of a seasoned politician. He wasn't arrogant, merely confident. He didn't boast, he stated facts. "And your goal now?" Nezu asked. "Presumably, you wish to return home." "Of course," Rimuru affirmed. "However, recreating the conditions for a stable dimensional crossing is extraordinarily difficult. It requires immense energy calculations and resources I currently lack access to. Until I can find a way back, I am for lack of a better term, a refugee here. Nezu leaned forward, his black eyes gleaming with intelligence. A refugee with the power to alter he global balance of power single-handedly. This presents a unique opportunity, and a unique problem, for both of us. The Hero Public Safety Commission will undoubtedly learn of today's events. They will want to classify you, control you, or eliminate you if they cannot. I have no interest in being controlled, Rimuru stated plainly. Precisely, Nezu chirped, spreading his paws. So, I have a proposition for you, Rimuru Tempest. While you are stranded in our world, why not align yourself with UA? We can offer you sanctuary, resources for your research, and information about our world. In exchange, you would act as a consultant, a protector for the school, and perhaps, a teacher. Toshinori looked at Nezu in surprise, but held his tongue. The idea was radical, but Nezu's plans always were. Rimuru considered it. He needed allies. He needed information. He needed a base of operations. UA provided all three, along with a front row seat to understand the power system of this world, quirks. It was the most logical move. There's another reason, Rimuru said, his gaze becoming distant for a moment. He thought of the students he'd seen. Midoriya's desperate bravery, Bakugo's explosive rage, and Momo's brilliant but hesitant mind. This world creates powerful individuals, but it seems to struggle with teaching them true wisdom. Perhaps I can offer a different perspective. He looked back at Nezu. I accept your offer, Principal Nezu. On one condition. Name it. I want direct access to your support infrastructure, specifically materials and engineering labs. And I want to select a few students for specialized tutoring. I saw potential that is being improperly nurtured. Nezu's smile widened. An excellent condition. I believe young Yaoyorozu in Class 1A caught your eye. Her quirk is a marvel of creation. Rimuru nodded. Among others, her potential is vast, but she lacks conviction. It's a flaw I believe I can help remedy. As the details of the agreement were ironed out, Rimuru kept one crucial piece of information to himself. Ciel's analysis of the rift energy had concluded. Report. The dimensional fissure exhibited trace signatures of a chaotic, high-energy entity. The energy signature is parasitic in nature, demonstrating properties inconsistent with known dimensional laws. It possesses characteristics of void energy, and exhibits a rudimentary, predatory intelligence. So, I didn't just fall here by accident, Rimuru thought, a cold sensation settling deep within him. Something pushed me through, or I was caught in the wake of something far larger. He had felt that corrupting influence for a split second before the portal closed, a vast, chilling hunger from the dark between worlds. Hypothesis. The entity's passage has created a weakness in this dimension's fabric. It is likely that more incursions will follow. The energy signature detected today is a precursor. Rimuru looked out of the hypothetical window, toward the city where millions lived, oblivious. His situation had just become infinitely more complicated. He wasn't just a lost king seeking a way home. He was a predator who had just led an even greater predator to a new hunting ground. Very well, Nezu-san, Rimuru said, standing up and offering a hand to shake. I look forward to working with UA. High school. I have a feeling things are about to get very interesting. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. The Strategist and the Sovereign. The days following the USJ incident settled into a tense routine. News reports were a chaotic whirlwind of speculation. Initial heroic counts of an overwhelming villain attack were quickly complicated by leaked footage, grainy, high-angle shots, of Rimuru Tempest's effortless intervention. Pundits debated whether he was a new, unregistered hero, a foreign vigilante, or a second-generation Nomu, with advanced intelligence. The Hero Public Safety Commission issued a terse statement urging caution and promising a thorough investigation into the unidentified quirk user. For the students of Class 1A, the reality was far more immediate. Shota Aizawa, back on his feet far sooner than any medical professional would have predicted, stood before them. Bandages still visible beneath his capture weapon. Settle down, Aizawa grumbled, his voice as dry as ever. The usual classroom chatter died instantly. As you're all aware, the events at the USJ highlighted significant gaps in our preparedness. To address this, and given the unique circumstances, UA has brought in a temporary consultant. He gestured to the side of the room. Rimuru Tempest walked in, dressed in the same comfortable, deceptively simple attire as before. He offered the class a polite smile that seemed to simultaneously put them at ease and set every nerve on high alert. "Good morning, everyone," Rimuru said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the room without needing to be raised. "My name is Rimuru Tempest. Principal Nezu has graciously invited me to assist with your development while I am a guest here." Katsuki Bakugo slouched in his seat, glaring. "Another extra. What are you supposed to teach us that Aizawa-sensei can't?" Rimuru turned his golden eyes on Bakugo. There was no judgment in his gaze, only assessment. "A fair question. Sensei Aizawa teaches you how to maximize your abilities within the framework of pro-hero combat. I am here to teach you how to break that framework entirely." He walked to the center of the room. "Your quirks are powerful tools. However, most of you define yourselves by a single application of that power. You, Bakugo Katsuki. Your quirk creates explosions via nitroglycerin-like sweat. Your application is primarily propulsion and high-impact offense. It's effective, but it's incredibly narrow-minded." Bakugo's eye twitched. "What did you say, you blue-haired punk? Tell me," Rimuru continued, unfazed by the simmering aggression, "have you ever considered the other properties of an explosion? The rapid expansion of gas creates immense pressure waves. Could you learn to shape that pressure wave into a non-lethal concussive force, incapacitating an opponent without burning them? Could you modulate the frequency of micro-explosions in your palms to create a deafening sonic pulse, a flashbang effect, or precise, localized vibrations for cutting through steel? You see destruction. I see untapped utility." Bakugo was rendered speechless, not by anger, but by genuine, unwelcome thought. He had never considered using his quirk for anything other than complete annihilation. The idea felt foreign, almost insulting, yet undeniably intriguing. Rimuru then turned to Todoroki Shoto. "You possess immense thermal range, from absolute zero to intense flame. Yet you wield them as separate, opposing forces. A blunt instrument of ice. A crude application of fire. Why not use them in concert? Rapid thermal cycling. Superheating a target and instantly flash freezing it, would cause structural failure in almost any material. You could create massive thermal updrafts for high-altitude reconnaissance or generate superheated steam explosions by flash vaporizing ice. You limit yourself by treating your quirk as two separate entities rather than a single, versatile tool of thermodynamic control." Todoroki stared back, his expression stoic, but inside, a new understanding was dawning. He had always seen his fire and ice as symbols of his rebellion and his heritage. He'd never viewed them purely as scientific phenomena to be manipulated in tandem. Rimuru continued for several minutes, moving from student to student, offering brief but profoundly insightful analyses of their abilities. He spoke to Kirishima about changing the density of his hardening rather than just its coverage, to Tokiyami out manipulating ambient light sources to better control Dark Shadow's power level. He didn't just understand their powers, he understood the underlying principles of physics and energy that governed them. Momo Yaoyorozu watched, completely captivated, his words from the USJ replayed in her mind, understanding its essence. He wasn't just guessing, he possessed a fundamental comprehension of power that dwarfed everyone else in the room. When his gaze finally fell on her, she felt a blush rise to her cheeks, a mixture of admiration and anxiety. He didn't speak to her, but simply offered a small nod of encouragement, as if to say, "That applies to you most of all." "Today's lesson," Rimuru concluded, "is theoretical. Your homework is not physical training. It is to write down 5 new applications for your quirk that have absolutely nothing to do with direct combat. Think support, think rescue, think creation, think misdirection. True strength lies in adaptability, not just force." As Rimuru dismissed them for their next class, the room was buzzing with a different kind of energy. He had systematically dismantled their understanding of their own powers in less than 20 minutes, leaving them with a sense of boundless possibility, and a healthy dose of awe for the being who saw it all so clearly. The workshop was Momo's sanctuary and her prison. Late at night, long after classes had ended and the dorms grew quiet, she would come here to push her limits. The vast room, filled with raw materials and high-tech fabrication tools, should have felt like home. Tonight, It felt like a monument to her failures. On the workbench before her lay the components of a complex clockwork mechanism. Gears of titanium alloy, synthetic ruby bearings, and hair-thin filaments of spring steel. It was a replica of an 18th-century astronomical clock, a device requiring microscopic precision. And it was failing. A small, intricately cut gear had sheared for the third time. The material composition was theoretically perfect. The molecular weight calculated to the microgram, yet under simulated stress, it fractured. Momo slumped onto her stool, burying her face in her hands. Frustration pricked at the corners of her eyes. It wasn't about the clock. It was about the principle. If she couldn't create a simple, non-functional piece of machinery under perfect conditions, how could she possibly create life-saving equipment in the heat of battle? Every failure reinforced the voice in her head that whispered she wasn't cut out for this, that her quirk was too slow, too unreliable, too dependent on a calm mind she rarely possessed when it mattered most. A beautiful design. The escapement mechanism is particularly complex for a purely mechanical piece. Momo yelped and nearly fell off her stool. Rimuru Tempest stood near the entrance, observing her work with a curious expression. He hadn't made a sound as he entered. Rimuru-sensei, she stammered, quickly trying to hide the failed components. I apologize. I was just cleaning up. There's no need to hide your process, Yaoyorozu-san, he said gently, walking closer. He picked up one of the failed gears, examining the fracture point. You're frustrated. The calculations are perfect, but the physical result is flawed. You believe you are failing the math. The tensile strength of the alloy should be more than sufficient, Momo explained. Slipping into her analytical comfort zone. I've accounted for rotational friction and energy transfer. There's no reason for it to shear, unless my creation process itself is fundamentally flawed. You are treating your quirk like a high-precision 3D printer, Rimuru said, echoing his earlier sentiment in class. You feed it data and expect a perfect result. But creation is not data entry. It's an act of will. He held out his hand next to hers. Try again. Create another gear. But this time, close your eyes. Close my eyes. But I need to focus on the molecular structure. No, Rimuru interrupted softly. You have the knowledge memorized. Your intellect isn't the issue. Your connection to the process is. Stop calculating and start feeling. Feel the molecules bonding. Feel the shape you desire. Don't request the universe to form it, command it to. Momo hesitated. It sounded less like science and more like mysticism. But looking at the calm conviction in his golden eyes, she felt a strange surge of trust. She closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and began to draw upon the lipids stored in her body. Instead of visualizing chemical charts and engineering blueprints, she focused on the concept of the gear, its strength, its purpose, its perfect, unbreakable form. A warm energy flowed from her skin. It felt different this time, less strained, more fluid. When she opened her eyes, a gear sat in her palm. It looked identical to the others, but when Rimuru picked it up and applied a sudden, sharp pressure with his thumb, it held firm without a hint of stress. Momo gasped. But how? The material composition is the same. Not quite, Rimuru said. Your previous attempts were precise but lacked soul. You created an object. This time, you created a concept. You imbued it with your will for it to be strong. In my world, we call this imbuing an intention into an object. It strengthens the bonds between particles on a conceptual level. Your quirk has a greater capacity than mere replication. It has true potential for enchantment. He smiled at her stunned expression. You are a brilliant strategist and possess knowledge far beyond your peers, Momo. But you doubt yourself because you fear waste. You fear that using your power for a failed attempt means you've stolen resources from a potential success. Am I wrong? She couldn't speak, only shake her head slowly. He saw right through her. When I first started building my nation, Rimuru said, his voice taking on a distant, nostalgic tone, I made countless mistakes. I allocated resources poorly. I trusted the wrong people. I failed in negotiations. Every failure felt catastrophic, as if I were letting down everyone who depended on me. He looked back at her. But a leader, a creator, cannot fear failure. Failure is just data acquisition for the next attempt. Every broken gear teaches you something new, not about the gear, but about yourself. Embrace the process, Yaoyorozu-san. Our potential isn't just to create objects, it's to create solutions no one else can even imagine. Momo looked down at the perfect gear in her hand, then back up at Rimuru. For the first time, someone hadn't just praised her intelligence or her quirk's versatility, they had understood her core struggle and offered a genuine path forward. The admiration she felt before was solidifying into something deeper. A profound respect and a connection that felt entirely new. Thank you, Rimuru-sensei, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I will try to remember that. I know you will, he replied. Now, get some rest. A tired mind cannot create effectively. As he left the workshop, Momo remained seated for a long time, looking at the gear. The doubt hadn't vanished entirely, but for the first time, she felt like she finally had a weapon to fight it with. The announcement of the UA Sports Festival sent a buzz through the school. For most students, it was the single greatest opportunity to showcase their abilities to pro heroes and secure future internships. For Class 1A, however, Nezu had added a preliminary round of specialized training exercises to prepare them for the heightened scrutiny following the USJ attack. Today's exercise was a team-based combat simulation in ground beta. Aizawa stood before two teams, a whistle in hand. Team A, Momo Yaoyorozu, leader Kyoka Jiro, and Fumikage Tokiyami. Team B, Katsuki Bakugo, leader Eijiro Kirishima, and Honta Siro. The objective was simple: retrieve a flag located in the center of a dense urban environment within 30 minutes. Capture of opposing team members resulted in points, but securing the objective was paramount. Bakugo grinned, cracking his knuckles. This'll be over in 5 minutes. Ponytail will just hide some. We're making Russian dolls while I blow Bird Brain and Sound Girl to pieces. In the observation room, Rimuru watched the monitors alongside Nezu in All Might. An interesting matchup, Nezu-san. They pitted calculated aggression against potential strategy. A high-risk, high-reward scenario for Team A. Indeed, Nezu chirped. I am eager to see how young Yaoyorozu handles the pressure, especially after your tutoring sessions. On the ground, Momo felt the familiar cold dread creep into her stomach. Leading a team against Bakugo, whose singular focus was victory through overwhelming force, was a nightmare scenario. Jiro placed a hand on her shoulder. Hey, you good? Don't let him get in your head. We've got Tokiyami's range and my recon. We can do this. Momo took a deep breath, forcing down the panic. Rimuru's voice echoed in her mind. Your ability isn't limited by physics, it's limited by imagination and conviction. He's right, Jiro-san, Momo said, her voice shaking slightly before steadying. Bakugo's greatest strength is his predictability. He will attack head-on, expecting us to scatter or mount a direct defense. We won't do either. She turned to her team, her mind rapt, idly processing variables and forming a plan. Here's what we do. Tokiyami, we need Dark Shadow for mobility and defense, not offense. Jiro, I need you to pinpoint Bakugo's exact location at all times. Siro will try to immobilize us. And Kirishima will act as Bakugo's shield. Our goal is not to defeat them in combat, but to make combat irrelevant. The whistle blew. Bakugo immediately launched himself into the air, using his explosions to rocket toward Team A's starting position. Kirishima and Siro fanned out, attempting a pincer movement. Jiro, now, Momo commanded. Jiro plugged her jacks into the building wall. He's coming fast from above, angle 45 degrees. Siro is flanking from the right, Kirishima from the left through the alley. Tokiyami, Dark Shadow, deploy a defensive screen above us. Not to fight, just to obscure vision, Momo ordered. As Dark Shadow unfurled, Momo pressed her palms together. From her back, a large sheet of thick, fire-retardant, non-conductive canvas emerged. Grab on. Bakugo smashed through the smoke screen created by Dark Shadow, landing where the team had been seconds before. The area was empty. Where did they go? Damn it. High above, hanging from a ledge several buildings over, Momo's team watched. She had created high-tension grappling hooks and ascenders. He'll search at ground level first, assuming we ran into the alleys. Jiro, keep tracking them. We're taking the rooftops directly to the objective. For 10 minutes, Momo led her team in a brilliant display of evasion and environmental control. When Zero used his tape to try and bridge the gap between buildings, Momo instantly created a set of high-powered laser pointers, directing Tokiyami to aim them at the tape's adhesion points. The focused heat caused the tape to lose stickiness, sending Zero scrambling. When Kirishima tried to cut them off, Momo created large-scale caltrops and a chemical foam spray that became incredibly slippery on contact, turning the street below into an impassable trap. "She's controlling the battlefield," Rimuru noted from the observation room, a hint of pride in his voice. "She's not reacting, she's dictating." Bakugo grew increasingly enraged. "Stop running, cowards." He finally pinpointed their location and blasted his way up the side of a building, cutting off their path to the objective flag, which was now just one building away. "Cornered, Yaomomo," Kirishima yelled, hardening his arms as he ran up the stairs. Momo's team took cover behind a large air conditioning unit. The end seemed near. Doubt resurfaced in Momo's mind. The plan failed. "He's too fast." "Momo, what now?" Jiro asked, her expression grim. Momo looked at Bakugo, who was preparing a massive AP shot. She looked at the flag behind him. Then she remembered Rimuru's words. "Failure is just data acquisition. He's expecting me to defend our surrender." A new resolve hardened her expression. This was part of the plan. "Tokiyami, full defense. Jiro, prepare to hit the ground on my signal." "What plan?" Tokiyami asked. "The one where we use his aggression against him," Momo replied. She began creating something large and complex from her stomach, hidden from Bakugo's view. Bakugo lunged forward. "Game over. Now," Momo yelled. She didn't create a shield. She created an industrial strength, spring-loaded catapult mechanism, braced against the building's infrastructure. Tokiyami and Jiro dove onto the platform. The device triggered, launching them over Bakugo's head in a high arc, directly toward the objective building. Bakugo whirled around in midair, stunned by the maneuver. "What?" He turned back to Momo, only to find she had created a massive, expanding airbag a split second before his explosion hit. The force of the blast was dissipated, and Momo herself was pushed back harmlessly, though out of commission. Team A members Jiro and Tokiyami have secured the objective flag. Aizawa's voice boomed over the speakers. "Team A wins." Bakugo landed on the rooftop, trembling with rage, staring at the airbag and the empty space where Momo had been. He hadn't just been beaten, he'd been outthought, completely and utterly humiliated, without a single direct exchange of blows. In the aftermath, as Momo helped her team clean up, she felt a genuine sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just victory, it was validation. Later that day, she passed Rimuru in the hallway. He simply smiled. "An unconventional solution, Yaoyorozu-san. Using a strategic sacrifice to achieve the primary objective. Well done." While UA focused on the upcoming festival, Rimuru turned his attention to the larger threat. The data from the USJ rift was troubling. Seal had correlated the energy signature with several recent, minor incidents reported in the news, localized electrical failures, sudden structural collapses, and reports of mass hysteria. Under the guise of a personal research trip, Rimuru visited the site of one such incident in the neighboring prefecture. It was a derelict warehouse district, cordoned off by police tape. To the naked eye, nothing seemed amiss. But to Rimuru's magic sense, the air itself felt wrong. He found the epicenter in a damp, lightless basement. There, embedded in the concrete wall, was a shard of crystal, dark purple and pulsating with a faint, malevolent light. It wasn't matter from this dimension. Alert. Detected high concentrations of corrupting energy. The material is attempting to rewrite local physical laws on a quantum level. It exhibits parasitic properties, drawing ambient energy from its surroundings. Rimuru reached out, materializing a barrier around his hand before touching the shard. A jolt of raw information flooded his mind. Images of chaos, feelings of insatiable hunger, and a deep-seated desire to unravel reality. It was the echo of the Nexus worm. So, it's not just sending heralds, he thought grimly. It's planting seeds, terraforming the dimension for its arrival. Simultaneously, the political pressure intensified. A sleek black car arrived at UA, carrying two individuals in sharp suits from the Hero Public Safety Commission. They met with Nezu and Rimuru in the principal's office. "Tempest-san," The lead woman said, her voice polite but steel-edged. Your actions at the USJ, while ultimately beneficial, were highly irregular. You operate outside any legal framework. To continue residing in Japan, you must submit to quirk registration and evaluation by the Commission. I appreciate your concern for protocol, ma'am, Rimuru replied, sipping his tea. However, as I explained to Principal Nezu, my abilities are not a quirk. Registering them as such would be factually incorrect. Furthermore, I am a sovereign leader displaced here by force majeure. Internation. Al custom would dictate diplomatic immunity, not compulsory registration. You are one man, not an embassy, the official countered. We have no proof of your claims, only your word and a display of power that makes many people very nervous. Nezu spoke up, his smile unwavering. Rimuru-san is currently under UA's protection and employed as a special consultant. Any official inquiries regarding his status can be directed through my office. Until such time as a formal diplomatic channel is established, UA takes full responsibility for his presence. The officials were clearly unhappy, but Nezu had played his hand perfectly. They could enforce the issue without escalating conflict with Japan's top hero school. They left with veiled threats about future oversight and public opinion. As Rimuru watched them leave, he knew this was only the beginning. The Commission feared what they couldn't control. All for one, wherever he was hiding, would seek to exploit that fear. And all the while, the true threat continued to grow in the shadows, unnoticed by all but him. He looked out the window toward the city. His initial goal had been to go home. Now, a new resolve was forming. He wouldn't let this world be consumed. And he wouldn't let the potential he saw in students like Momo Yaoyorozu be extinguished before it had a chance to truly shine. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. Echoes of the Void. The city of Hosu was on fire. Not just figuratively, but literally. Smoke plumed into the night sky, a stark contrast to the neon glow of surrounding districts. The chaos had started an hour ago, a multi-pronged crisis that had stretched local hero resources to their absolute limit. First came the reports of the hero killer, Stain, striking down pro-heroes in back alleys. Then, as if summoned by the bloodshed, 3 Nomu had appeared in the city center, wreaking indiscriminate destruction. Endeavor, the number 2 hero, had arrived to take charge, his face a mask of furious determination. He was a force of nature, a walking inferno, but even he was being pushed to his limits, trying to coordinate a defense while simultaneously engaging multiple high-level threats. It was into this maelstrom that the true threat emerged. It didn't appear with an explosion or a roar. A quiet street, relatively untouched by the fighting, simply began to change. The asphalt buckled, not breaking, but flowing like liquid stone. A lamp post twisted, its metal groaning as it contorted into an impossible spiral. From the center of the street, a figure rose from the liquefied ground. It was roughly humanoid, 9 feet tall, composed of a material that looked like smoked quartz, shot through with veins of pulsating, violet light. It had no face, only a smooth, featureless surface that reflected the fires around it. Where it walked, the ground didn't burn or break, it corrupted. Concrete turned to brittle, crystalline structures. Metal rusted and decayed in seconds. This was a herald of the Nexus Worm. A team of sidekicks, responding to a call, rounded the corner and skidded to a halt. What in the hell? Another Nomu. One hero yelled, preparing a water-based quirk. The herald raised an arm. It didn't fire a projectile. Instead, the air in front of it shimmered, and a dozen razor-sharp spears of crystal materialized from ambient moisture and dust, launching forward at supersonic speed. The heroes scattered, but one wasn't fast enough. The spear struck his protective vest, and instead of impaling him, it began to spread. The crystal rapidly grew over his body, encasing him in a dark, jagged cocoon within seconds. He didn't scream for long. Fall back. Call Endeavor. This thing is S rank. At UA, the mood in the newly established strategic monitoring room was grim. Students partook. iPadding in internships were scattered across the country, but many, including Momo, were completing analytical work on campus before deployment. Rimuru had requisitioned the room, ostensibly to help Nezu track potential threats. But truly to monitor for the energy signature he now knew preceded disaster. Momo sat at a console, her fingers flying across a keyboard. She wasn't just watching news feeds. She was cross-referencing live hero reports, police frequencies, and city infrastructure sensors. "Sensei," she said, her voice tight with professional focus, "Hosu's situation is deteriorating faster than projected models. The Nomu attacks are a feint. There's a fourth entity, unclassified, operating in the Shigetamo district. Casualty reports are climbing exponentially in that zone, and all responding heroes have gone silent." Rimuru stood behind her, watching the screen where grainy helicopter footage showed the Herald's advance. He recognized the energy signature instantly. It was stronger, more stable than the traces he'd found before. Seal, analysis of Herald's current output. Understood. The entity is creating a localized reality distortion field. It converts matter in a radius of approximately 50 meters into a crystalline state subservient to its will. Conventional kinetic and thermal energy attacks are being rendered inefficient by localized spatial warping and energy absorption. Local heroes possess no viable countermeasures. On screen, Endeavor finally arrived, a comet of blue flame. He unleashed a massive prominence burn, engulfing the Herald in a vortex of fire hot enough to melt skyscrapers. The flames roared, and the surrounding buildings turned to slag. But when the fire cleared, the Herald stood completely unharmed, the crystalline structure around it glowing faintly as it absorbed the thermal energy. Endeavor's look of shock was visible even on the low-resolution feed. Momo's hands froze above the keyboard. It absorbed it. The heat, the kinetic force, that level of energy negation, it's not possible. No quirk can do that. She turned to look at Rimuru, her eyes wide with a dawning horror and understanding. "That's it, isn't it? The threat you were preparing for. The one from outside." Rimuru's expression was calm, but his mind was calculating at light speed. The moral dilemma was stark. Option 1. Do nothing. Let the local heroes handle it. Result: catastrophic loss of life, potential capture of the Herald by All for One, and the strengthening of the dimensional breach. Option 2. Intervene. Reveal a level of power far beyond anything seen before. This would save lives but accelerate the HPSC's paranoia and draw AFO's direct attention. It would shatter the fragile balance of this world. "The people are dying," Momo whispered, her gaze fixed on the screen where civilians were being cornered. "Their quirks are useless. They're going to be slaughtered." She looked up at him, her usual composure cracking, replaced by raw desperation. "You can stop this, can't you? Please. You have to." The calculation ended. The fear in Momo's voice tipped the scales far more effectively than any strategic analysis. Protecting the innocent took precedence over political maneuvering. "Yes, I can," Rimuru said simply. He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Prepare yourself. We're going." Momo's breath hitched. "Sensei, I'll be completely useless. I can't fight that thing." "Your role isn't to fight," Rimuru replied, his voice leaving no room for argument. "It's to observe, to learn, and to survive. A true leader cannot hide from the reality of the threats they face. I will protect you." Before she could protest further, he activated spatial domination. The world dissolved around them. The air in Hosu tore open. For a split second, a shimmering rift appeared on a rooftop overlooking the chaotic battle. Rimuru and Momo stepped out, the transition so smooth that Momo barely had time to feel disoriented before the sounds and smells of the battlefield assaulted her senses. The roar of fire, the shriek of metal, the acrid smell of burning chemicals, and underneath it all, a palpable aura of dread emanating from the Herald. Rimuru's first action was protective. He didn't create a physical shield around Momo. Instead, he applied a multi-layered barrier from his ultimate skill Uriel, an absolute defense that was completely invisible to the naked eye. To Momo, it felt as if the suffocating pressure in the air had suddenly lessened, a pocket of calm forming around her. "Stay here. Do not move from this spot," Rimuru commanded. His voice was no longer the gentle teacher's, it was the absolute command of a sovereign. He stepped to the edge of the rooftop and looked down. Endeavor, having realized brute force was failing, was coordinating an evacuation. His face contorted in rage and frustration. The Herald advanced slowly, methodically, turning everything in its path into a forest of jagged, black crystal. Analysis complete, Rimuru murmured to himself. The core is located in the thoracic cavity, protected by layers of warped space. It's using the surrounding corrupted matter as a battery. I need to sever its connection to the environment and strike the core simultaneously. Endeavor spotted him on the rooftop. You, the UA consultant, get out of here. This is an S-rank zone. Your subtle quirk won't work here. Rimuru ignored him. He raised one hand, palm facing the sky. Let's clear the stage first. He activated another facet of Uriel, spatial domination. A vast, semi-transparent dome materialized over a 10-block radius. Shimmering with faint, iridescent light, the dome separated the inner battle zone from the outside world. Civilians outside the barrier felt the crushing pressure vanish. Heroes inside realized they were trapped with the monster. What did you do? Endeavor roared, looking up at the barrier. Did you trap us? I isolated the threat, Rimuru called down, his voice cutting through the noise. Now, stand back, number 2 hero. Your fire is only feeding it. The Herald recognized Rimuru as the primary threat. It stopped its advance and turned its full attention to him. It raised both arms, and the ground beneath Rimuru's rooftop erupted. Massive spikes of corrupted crystal shot upward, aiming to impale him. Rimuru didn't move. He simply floated gently into the eye. As the rooftop beneath him was pulverized. From Momo's perspective, he looked completely serene, a calm eye in a hurricane of destruction. The Herald shrieked, a sound like scraping metal, and unleashed a volley of corrosive energy blasts. This time, Rimuru acted offensively. He held out his hand, and Beelzebub manifested as a small, swirling sphere of darkness. The corrosive blasts were drawn into the vortex, consumed without a trace. It's eating the attacks, Momo whispered, clutching the railing. She was watching a battle that defied every law of physics she had ever learned. This wasn't a quirk fight. This was something else entirely. Endeavor watched, dumbfounded. The power that had negated his strongest attacks was being effortlessly neutralized. The gap was humiliatingly obvious. Rimuru decided to end it. The longer the Herald existed, the more damage it did to the dimensional fabric. He had gathered enough data. Seal, pinpoint core resonance frequency. Prepare to deploy a NTI magic barrier synchronized with a high-energy convergence strike. Calculating. Complete. Executing solution. Rimuru's body flared with a brilliant silver light. He disappeared from view, moving faster than Endeavor's eyes could track. He reappeared directly in front of the Herald, hovering inches from its chest. The creature tried to bring its crystalline claws to bear, but its movements seemed to slow. Caught in the invisible grip of Rimuru's spatial lock. Let's see what you're really made of, Rimuru said. He didn't punch it. He didn't blast it with fire. He placed his open palm on the Herald's chest. A focused beam of black light, shot through with golden sparks, lanced from his hand. It wasn't an explosion. It was a precise injection of pure, disintegrating energy. The Herald froze. The pulsating violet light within its body flickered violently. A wave of force expanded outwards, but instead of destruction, it carried a restorative property. The corrupted crystal covering the buildings and streets shattered into harmless dust. The black spikes reverted to broken asphalt and concrete. The very air felt clean again. The Herald itself crumbled from the inside out, dissolving into fine particles of salt and inert silicon. In less than 2 minutes from his arrival, the S-rank threat was gone. Silence descended upon Hosu. Heroes, police, and civilians stared at the floating figure, who slowly drifted back down to the rooftop where he had left Momo. The barrier above them dissolved as if it had never existed. The adrenaline faded as quickly as it had come, leaving a vacuum in its wake. Momo's legs gave out, and she collapsed against the rooftop access structure, her entire body trembling violently. The reality of what she had witnessed, the sheer scale of the THR, and the even more terrifying scale of Rimuru's power, crashed down on her. It was one thing to see power in a training exercise, it was another to see it negate certain death for an entire city. Rimuru landed softly beside her. The overwhelming aura of the sovereign receded, replaced by the familiar calm of the teacher. He knelt, his expression one of gentle concern. Are you injured? Momo shook her head, unable to form words. She wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop the shaking. A choked sob escaped her. She wasn't crying from fear for herself. She was crying from the sudden, visceral understanding of the world she lived in. I was so scared, she finally managed to whisper, looking up at him, tears streaming down her face. I tried to analyze it. To think of a strategy, like you taught me. But there was nothing. No calculation. No material I could create, nothing. We would have all died if you weren't here. That's true, Rimuru said honestly. There was no point in false platitudes. This enemy operates outside the rules of your world. It's not a failure on your part to be unable to counter something you have no context for. But that's not all, Momo continued, her voice cracking. When it attacked you, when those spikes came up from the ground, I thought, she took a shuddering breath. It's illogical. I've seen what you can do. I know you're powerful, but my heart just stopped. I hate this feeling. I hate feeling this completely and utterly useless while you're putting yourself on the line against monsters like that. She looked down at her hands. I want to stand beside you. I want to be useful. But the distance between us, it feels like a canyon. How can I ever hope to bridge that? Rimuru listened patiently. He saw her struggle, the conflict between her powerful intellect and her deeply human emotional response. He recognized the frustration of a capable person facing an insurmountable obstacle. But he also heard she wasn't explicitly saying. Her fear was rooted in her growing care for him. He reached out, not with the authority of a king, but with simple human comfort, placing a hand gently on her head. Our trembling subsided slightly at the contact. Momo, he said, his voice soft but firm. Your value isn't measured by your ability to fight a creature like that. Your strength lies elsewhere. It lies in the mind that calculated the threat before anyone else. It lies in the heart that felt empathy for strangers in danger. You think you were useless. While I was fighting, Seal was processing data said on observations you made before we even left UA. This was a slight exaggeration. Seal had already completed most of the analysis, but it was fundamentally true that her input had confirmed his decision. As for the distance between us, he continued, a rare, gentle smile touching his features, it's not as large as you think. He made a choice then, a decision to step beyond the role of mentor. When I fight, I make calculations. Risks versus rewards. Acceptable losses. Today, when I brought you here, my calculations changed. My primary directive, above defeating the enemy, above minimizing property damage, was ensuring your absolute safety. That wasn't a strategic decision, Momo. That was a personal priority. Momo looked up, her tear-filled eyes meeting his golden gaze. The implication hung heavy in the air between them. Clear and undeniable, he had prioritized her life above the mission itself. The fear that had felt like a crushing weight began to transform into something else, a deep, anchoring warmth that spread from her chest outward. It was terrifying in its own way, but it was also solid. Real. She didn't know what to say, so she did the only thing that felt right. She leaned forward, closing the small distance between them, and rested her forehead against his chest, clutching the fabric of his tunic. He stiffened for a moment, surprised by the contact, then relaxed, placing a protective arm around her shoulders. They stayed like that for several minutes as sirens wailed in the distance, a small island of peace in a sea of chaos. The bond between them had been forged in intellectual respect, now it was sealed in shared danger and emotional vulnerability. The fallout was immediate. The live feed from news helicopters had captured everything. The image of Rimuru Tempest floating above Hosu, effortlessly disintegrating an entity that had baffled Endeavor, was broadcast worldwide within the hour. The public reaction was a mixture of awestruck relief and profound terror. The question on everyone's lips was no longer, who is he? But, what is he? He was clearly not a quirk user. He was something else, something ancient and overwhelmingly powerful. In a darkened command center, the president of the Hero Public Safety Commission watched the looping footage, her face grim. He didn't just intervene, she said to her aides. He rendered the number 2 hero irrelevant. He established dominance. He's uncontrollable. This changes our entire approach. Standard containment protocols are useless. Far away, in a hidden chamber filled with life support equipment, All for One watched the same feed on multiple monitors. He laughed, a dry, rasping sound. How fascinating, he mused, a network of tubes feeding information directly into his mind. The inner GY signature of that crystalline creature. It carries the scent of the void, something older than quirks, older than humanity itself. And this creature, Rimuru Tempest, he wields power that not only counters it but consumes it. He's not just a powerful piece to be stolen from the board. He's an entirely new player, from an entirely different game. All for One's smile widened. The chaos create, by the Commission's fear would be useful. Let them try to control the storm. He would wait, watch, and learn. Because whoever controlled Rimuru Tempest, or found a way to take his power, would control the future itself. Chapter 3 End. Chapter 4. A Tempest in the Commission. The world held its breath. In the 24 hours following the Hosu incident, Rimuru Tempest became the single most searched term on the planet. The footage was undeniable, replayed ad nauseum on every network. Endeavor, the pillar of fiery strength, rendered impotent, a monster of unknown origin effortlessly dispatched. And a mysterious figure wielding power that defied classification. The narrative shifted from heroic intervention to existential dread. Humanity had discovered a new apex predator, and it was living among them. Inside a soundproof, high-security chamber deep beneath Tokyo, the Hero Public Safety Commission convened an emergency session. The air was cold, the mood colder. President Shikata, a woman, whose entire career was built on meticulous risk management, stared at the holographic display projecting Rimuru's face. He didn't just neutralize the threat, Shikata stated, her voice devoid of emotion. He did so with a level of precision that indicates his full capabilities are vastly greater than what we witnessed. He made a conscious choice to reveal that much power. It was a statement, a warning. An older commission member spoke up. The public response is polarized. Half view him as a messiah, the other half as the harbinger of an apocalypse. Endeavor's agency has lodged a formal complaint regarding unauthorized intervention and power usage. The man himself refuses to comment, which is perhaps more telling. We cannot control him, Shikata said flatly. Standard procedures, registration, licensing, oversight, are irrelevant. A being that can nullify Endeavor and erect citywide barriers at will does not adhere to human laws. He adheres to his own. It was then that a younger, ambitious commissioner named Tato spoke. He was known for his hawkish views and connections to advanced quirk research divisions. President, while direct confrontation is clearly ill-advised, perhaps we are viewing the problem incorrectly. We've been analyzing the energy signatures from both the USJ incident and the Hosu Herald. Our research teams have found a disturbing correlation. He brought up a complex graph. The ambient energy readings in Hosu showed a significant spike in unknown particles before the Herald manifested. This energy signature bears a striking resemblance to the residual energy left by Tempest's own abilities. The working theory is a cause and effect relationship. Tempest isn't the cure, he's the carrier. His very presence in our dimension acts as a beacon, attracting these entities. The more power he uses, the stronger the signal becomes. A chill fell over the room. The data, meticulously crafted and subtly altered by all for one's agents within Tato's division, painted a damning picture. It shifted Rimuru from potential ally to existential plague. Shikata's eyes narrowed. This provided the justification she needed. If this data is accurate, she declared, then he represents an unacceptable risk. He cannot be allowed to roam free. He must be contained, studied, and if necessary, neutralized. Prepare Operation Chimera's Cage. We will frame this as protective custody. UA will be given one opportunity to surrender him. If they refuse, we will escalate force. Deep within his subterranean prison, All for One listened to the live feed of the mission meeting through Tato's hidden communicator. A faint, wheezing laugh escaped him. The commission was so predictable. Fear was the easiest tool to manipulate. By framing Rimuru as the source of the danger, AFO achieved multiple goals. He turned the state against his most powerful obstacle, created widespread chaos to nurture more corrupted quirks, and forced Rimuru to expend energy fighting heroes, further straining the dimensional barrier for AFO's true purpose. The pieces were moving exactly as he wished. UA High School transformed into a fortress. The Commission's ultimatum had been delivered discreetly but firmly. Hand over Rimuru Tempest within 48 hours, or face sanctions and forced entry. Nezu's refusal was instantaneous and public. The principal held a press conference where he calmly stated that UA would not bow to unsubstantiated fear-mongering, and would protect its guests and faculty. The school's iconic barriers were raised, cutting it off from the city. For Class 1A, trapped inside, the tension was palpable. The news painted a picture of their new mentor as a world-ending threat. The upcoming sports festival, once the pinnacle of their year, now felt trivial. In the common room, opinions were divided. "This is insane," Kaminari said, scrolling through social media feeds filled with conspiracy theories. "They're talking about him like he's going to eat the planet. He saved us at the USJ." But Endeavor himself filed a complaint, Ojiro pointed out nervously. "And that thing in Hosu. Kaminari, you didn't see it. The power level was on another scale. It's scary to think something like that is walking around our school." Bakugo scoffed from the couch. "So what? He's strong. Strong people make weak people nervous. If they want to pick a fight with him, let them try. It'll be more exciting than this stupid lockdown." Izuku Midoriya muttered to himself, analyzing the situation from every angle. The HPSC's move doesn't make logical sense from a purely defensive standpoint. If Rimuru-san truly attracts those monsters, isolating him in a populated area like this is counterintuitive. It feels like there's missing information, or misinformation at play. Someone is manipulating the commission. Momo sat quietly by the window, observing the perimeter where HPSC vehicles were already forming a blockade. Her phone buzzed. It was a call from her father. She stepped into the hallway to answer. "Momo, I'm sending a private car to the extraction point at Gate 3, his voice came through, sharp and commanding. "Nezu has agreed to allow student extractions for families who request it. You will leave campus immediately. The Yaoyorozu family cannot afford to be associated with this level of political instability, especially not on the losing side." Momo clutched the phone. A few weeks ago, that command would have sent her into a spiral of anxious obedience. Now, something inside her had solidified. She remembered Rimuru's words in the workshop. A leader cannot fear failure. She thought of his absolute calm in Hosu, and the protective warmth of his hand on her shoulder. "No, father," she said, her voice clear and steady, surprising even herself. There was silence on the other end. "What did you say?" "I said no. I believe Principal Nezu is doing the right thing. And I believe in Rimuru-sensei. What the HPSC is doing is wrong. And I will not abandon my school and my friends because it's politically inconvenient." "Momo, do not be foolish," her father began to argue, his tone rising. "I am making a choice based on my own convictions," she interrupted, cutting him off respectfully but firmly. "I am a hero in training, and heroes don't run when people need help. I have to go." She ended the call before he could reply, taking a deep breath. It felt like stepping off a cliff, but also like growing wings. She turned to find Rimuru standing a few feet down the hall, having approached silently. He wasn't eavesdropping, he had clearly overheard the end of her conversation. That was a difficult decision, he observed quietly. To defy family in favor of principle. It was the right decision, Momo replied, meeting his gaze. "They are wrong about you." "I know they are." Rimuru smiled faintly. "Your conviction is growing stronger, Momo. It suits you." He gestured back toward the command center where Nezu was coordinating defenses. "Come. If we are to be besieged, we should prepare a proper reception. Your knowledge of pro-hero tactics will be invaluable." They entered the command center, a room now buzzing with activity. Aizawa and Present Mike were coordinating internal security patrols. Nezu oversaw the macro strategy. "Rimuru-san, Momo-san, excellent timing," Nezu chirped. "The HPSC has begun deploying hero teams to the perimeter. They appear to be preparing for infiltration. Best Jeanist and Edgeshot have been spotted." Momo immediately moved to the central holographic map. "Edgeshot will try to infiltrate via the ventilation or sewer systems. His quirk allows him to become paper thin. We need to seal non-essential pathways and increase sensor sensitivity in all ducts. Best Jeanist will try to restrain multiple targets at once from a distance. His range is significant, but he needs line of sight and his threads are vulnerable to high-velocity, sharp projectiles." Rimuru listened, impressed. Seal could provide raw data. But Momo provided context and insight into the human element, the specific ways heroes thought and operated. A sound analysis, Momo, Rimuru said. He turned to Nezu. Principal, I suggest we don't engage directly. We should focus on non-lethal countermeasures and misdirection. The longer we hold them off without causing injury, the more desperate and reckless the Commission's tactics will become, revealing their true intentions to the public. My thoughts exactly. Nezu agreed. Momo and Rimuru began working side by side. She would identify a potential infiltration route or a specific hero's weakness, and he would devise a countermeasure using UA's advanced technology augmented by small applications of his own power. For Edgeshot, he suggested creating pressurized air traps within the vents. For Best Jeanist, Momo proposed deploying automated drones programmed to sever his threads with high-frequency blades. They worked for hours, a seamless partnership of intellect and experience. She provided the specific knowledge of this world. He provided the high-level strategy and power to implement solutions. The student-teacher dynamic had evaporated entirely, replaced by the quiet efficiency of two commanders preparing for battle. Meanwhile, the chaos AFO desired began to manifest. Across Japan, isolated incidents of quirk malfunction surged. A-teen. Ager in Musudafu suddenly lost control of his minor telekinetic quirk, causing a localized gravity distortion that injured dozens. A factory worker in Yokohama found her body uncontrollably shifting, her limbs momentarily dissolving into a dark, crystalline substance before reforming. The Nexus worm's influence, nurtured by the fear gripping the nation, was taking root. These low-level, corrupted quirks were a sign that the dimensional barrier was fraying at the edges. Rimuru, monitoring these reports via SEAL, felt a growing urgency. The political standoff wasn't just a game of chess, it was a race against time. The siege began at dawn on the second day. It wasn't a declaration of war, but a clinical, professional operation. UA. High School, this is Pro-Hero Best Jeanist acting on behalf of the HPSC. His voice boomed over loudspeakers. You are harboring an S-class threat. Surrender Rimuru Tempest immediately, and this action will cease. Refuse, and we will enter by force to ensure national security. Nezu, from his command center, broadcast his reply across all channels. UA does not negotiate with those who use threats to bypass due process. Our barriers will hold. The FIRST wave came exactly as Momo predicted. Edgeshot attempted infiltration. He slipped through a microscopic crack in a foundation wall, only to find the internal systems rerouted. The ventilation shaft he entered began to fill with a rapidly expanding, non-toxic, incredibly sticky foam created by UA's support course technology, forcing a humiliating retreat. Best Jeanist attempted to immobilize security drones patrolling the wall. As his threads shot out, Momo initiated her counter protocol. A swarm of small, agile drones flew out, a net of high-frequency lasers slicing his threads to pieces faster than he could manipulate them. For hours, the standoff continued. Every attempt at infiltration or breach by the HPSC-controlled heroes was met with an ingenious, non-lethal countermeasure devised by Momo and implemented by UA's systems. No one was hurt, but the Commission's forces were completely stymied. The frustration on the faces of the heroes outside grew evident. In the command center, Momo allowed herself a small smile of satisfaction. They're becoming predictable. They're relying on standard tactics against an unconventional defense. As long as we control the flow, they can't. Beep beep beep. An alarm blared through the room, high-pitched and urgent. A map flashed red over a sector far from the main confrontation point. Barrier breach. A UA technician shouted. Sector Gamma. The power junction just failed. A complete system crash. Impossible, Aizawa growled, heading for the door. That sector is reinforced and has no external access points. It wasn't an outside attack, Nezu said, staring grimly at the screen, which now showed security footage from inside the junction. The footage revealed a UA staff member, a long-trusted support engineer, placing a device on the power conduit seconds before it exploded. The engineer looked up at the camera, smiled, and was then consumed by Kurogiri's warp gate. A mole, Momo breathed, her blood running cold. They were inside all along. Rimuru's expression hardened. The feint at the front gate, the predictable attacks, it was all misdirection. AFO had used the HPSC's conventional tactics to mask his own surgical strike. Alert! SEAL reported internally to Rimuru. Multiple high-speed intruders detected entering through the breach in Sector Gamma. Their energy signatures do not match the heroes outside. They are moving directly toward the Central Command Center. Before anyone could react, the reinforced steel door to the command center imploded, blasted off its hinges by an unseen force. Smoke filled the room. Figures began to emerge from the dust-choked hallway. Not HPSC agents, but elite mercenaries clad in black tactical gear, their eyes glowing with a faint, corrupted purple light. Adding them was a figure Rimuru recognized from Shigaraki's side, though in different attire, Kurogiri. "Good evening, Principal Nezu," Rimuru Tempest, Kurogiri's disembodied voice echoed. "Lord All-Foe, R1 expresses his disappointment in your lack of cooperation. He has decided to extend a personal invitation." Chapter 4 End. Chapter 5. Sovereign of Two Worlds. The explosion that tore the Command CENTER doors from their hinges was a declaration. This was no longer a political siege, it was an invasion. Smoke and pulverized metal filled the air as the elite mercenaries, their eyes glowing with a faint, corrupting purple, advanced into the room. Aizawa's capture weapon shot out instantly, wrapping around the lead mercenary, but the man didn't even flinch. He tore the durable fabric apart with his bare hands, which crackled with dark energy. "These are not HPSC agents," Aizawa snarled, his own eyes flashing red as he erased the quirk of the mercenary in front of him. "Their quirks are unstable, enhanced." While Aizawa and the other UA staff present engaged the intruders, Rimuru moved. He didn't attack. Instead, he created a shimmering, transparent barrier of energy around Momo and Nezu, shielding them from the ricocheting debris and energy blasts. "Their objective is not to defeat us," Rimuru said calmly, his eyes tracking the intruders' movements with analytical precision. "It's a smash and grab. They're heading for the central console." Kurogiri flowed like smoke through the battle, his warp gates opening and closing to reposition the enhanced soldiers, making them an unpredictable, chaotic force. He shielded their leader, a man with a featureless metal mask, as he reached the main UA server console. The masked man slammed a complex, pulsating device onto its surface. It looked like a mechanical heart made of obsidian and wired with glowing purple conduits. It latched on, drilling into the school's mainframe. "Objective complete," the masked man stated, his voice a metallic rasp. Suddenly, a new voice filled the room, projecting from the device itself. It was a voice ancient and powerful, laced with a chilling, patronizing amusement. It was the voice of All for One. "Greetings, Principal Nezu, and a special welcome to our guest of honor, Rimuru Tempest. I do hope you'll forgive the mess. I've grown tired of playing political games." Outside, the heroes leading the siege felt the ground tremble. "What's happening? Did they breach the main gate?" Best Jeanist demanded. Then, the sky began to change. The light of the rising sun dimmed, not as if covered by a cloud, but as if the light itself was being drained away. The air grew cold. A vast, intricate pattern, like a spiderweb of violet energy, spread across the sky, centered directly above UA. "My dear heroes of the Commission." All for One's voice now boomed across the entire campus, broadcast from every speaker. "Thank you for your invaluable contribution. Your fear, your anger, the public's panic. The raw energy of so many powerful quirks focused on one location, it has created the perfect catalyst. You thought you were laying a siege. No, you were powering my ritual." The obsidian Devik in the command center pulsed violently, drawing a torrent of energy from UA's power grid and channeling it into the sky. The web of light intensified. The world seemed to hold its breath. "What is he doing?" Momo breathed from within Rimuru's barrier, her eyes wide with terror as she looked at the holographic display of the sky above. "He's not trying to capture me," Rimuru said, his voice grim as Seal fed him the final, horrifying analysis. "He's using the negative emotional energy and the ambient power of this location to forcibly tear open the dimensional fissure. He wants to summon the power he cannot understand." The sky did not tear. It cracked, like a sheet of black glass struck by a hammer. Fractures of impossible colors, colors that had no name and seemed to hurt the eyes, spread from the epicenter. A sound followed, but it wasn't a noise that traveled through the air. It was a psychic scream of utter silence, a vibration of pure nothingness that resonated directly in the soul. From the crack, the avatar of the Nexus worm began to emerge. It was not a creature of flesh and bone. It was a living wound in reality, a being of impossible geometry and corrosive light. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but its limbs were constantly shifting, its form made of overlapping planes of existence. Its core was a vortex of absolute blackness, and from it emanated an aura of anti-existence. A palpable hunger that didn't just want to destroy, but to unmake. The HPSC-controlled heroes stared up in abject horror, their conflict with UA forgotten, replaced by a primal terror that dwarfed all other concerns. The Avatar's first act was to turn its gaze upon the command center. It raised a shifting, ethereal arm. The AFO-enhanced mercenaries who had breached the school suddenly screamed. Their bodies dissolving into purple light, their life force and corrupted quirks absorbed by the Avatar in a heartbeat. The obsidian device on the console overloaded and exploded. Such a disappointing vessel. A chorus of dissonant voices echoed from the Avatar, a telepathic message that scraped across every mind within miles. All for one's attempt to control it had been less than an insect's attempt to control a hurricane. He had only succeeded in ringing the dinner bell. The Avatar was now fully present, hovering over the school, its corrupting influence causing the very ground of UA to warp and crystallize. Momo, Rimuru said, his voice urgent, his full attention now on the entity in the sky. The situation has changed. This is no longer a battle. It's a purification. He began to float into the air, his body glowing with a dense, silver aura. But as he unleashed his first probe of energy, a bolt of pure magicules, it struck the Avatar and dissipated harmlessly, absorbed into its void-like core. Alert, Ciel's voice reported in his mind. Conventional energy attacks are ineffective. The target's body exists in a state of quantum flux, negating all standard physical and magical laws. It is not destroying reality, it is overriding it with its own. It can't be destroyed by force, Rimuru said aloud, a grim realization dawning. It must be disconnected. A solution has been formulated. Ciel continued. To banish the Avatar, its resonant frequency must be anchored to this dimension, while its dimensional anchor is simultaneously severed. This requires the construction of a specialized device, a dimensional frequency stabilizer. The theoretical blueprint is complete. In the next instant, a flood of information poured directly into Momo's mind. It was a telepathic data transfer from Rimuru. She gasped, stumbling back, her mind reeling from the sheer complexity of the blueprint she now possessed. It was a design for a device that defied known physics, requiring alloys that didn't exist and energy conduits woven from principles she had only ever read about in the most esoteric theoretical papers. I can't, she stammered, overwhelmed. The materials, the precision. It's impossible. Rimuru's voice echoed in her thoughts, calm and absolute amidst the growing chaos. You can, Momo. Your quirk is not limited to what you know, it is limited by what you can imagine. I have given you the knowledge. You possess the will, I will buy you the time you need. I trust you. That was it. That simple, unwavering declaration of faith. I trust you. It cut through her fear, extinguishing her doubt like a candle in a gale. He was going to fight that god of emptiness, and he was entrusting the key to victory to her. She straightened up, her expression hardening with a resolve she never knew she possessed. Aizawa-sensei, Nezu-sensei, I need the support course workshop, now. I need raw materials, tungsten, carbon fiber, rare earth magnets, everything you have. And I need help. What followed was a battle on two fronts. In the sky, Rimuru Tempest unleashed a fraction of his true power as a demon lord. He knew he couldn't destroy the Avatar. So his goal was to contain it, to keep its corrupting influence from spreading beyond the UA barrier. He activated Beelzebub, no longer as a subtle attack, but as a ravenous maw. He summed the torrents of corrosive void energy the Avatar threw at him. He deployed Ural's absolute barrier, not just as a shield, but as a cage of conceptual space, attempting to lock the Avatar in place. The grounds of UA became their battlefield. The Avatar would gesture, and the earth would peel back, revealing a screaming abyss. Rimuru would counter, his will imposing order, sealing the rift. The Avatar would project waves of reality-erasing light, Rimuru would meet them with waves of soul-protecting haki. It was a battle of fundamental forces, a god of antimatter against a sovereign of order and will. The very air shattered and reformed around them. On the ground, a different kind of battle was being waged. Momo burst into the support course workshop, a whirlwind of focused intensity. The blueprint from Rimuru was etched in her mind's eye. I need a high-density tungsten rhenium alloy crucible, here. She commanded, pointing to a forge. Jiro-san, I need you to use your jacks on the main power conduit. I'll need you to help me monitor the energy frequencies of the device as it's being assembled. They have to match the specifications exactly. You got it, Yaomomo. Jiro replied, already getting to work. Kaminari-san, Momo called out, I need controlled, high-amperage electrical charges to polarize the magnetic core. Your output has to be precise. Can you do it? Kaminari, seeing the gravity of the situation, nodded grimly. Just tell me where and when. The students of Class 1A, who had rushed to the scene after the breach, became her hands and feet. Uraraka used her quirk to lift heavy, newly created components into place. Iida used his speed to ferry materials from storage vaults. Hiroshima and Sato provided brute force, helping to shape and mold materials in the forges. It was a symphony of desperation and cooperation, and Momo was its conductor. She didn't hesitate. She didn't doubt. Her hands were a blur of motion as she used her own body as the ultimate fabricator, creating components with a speed and precision that would have been impossible just weeks ago. She forged impossible alloys by manipulating carbon bonds at the atomic level. She wove energy conduits from solidified light and spun rare earth elements into hypermagnets. Her mind was on fire, not with panic, but with pure, unadulterated focus. She was a creator, and this would be her masterpiece. The battle above raged. Rimuru was being pushed back. The Avatar's power was seemingly endless, drawn from the void itself. A glancing blow from a tendril of anti-existence struck the ground near the workshop, and the building began to crystallize and decay. Aizawa, Bakugo, and Todoroki worked together, creating a desperate defensive line to protect the workshop from the bottle's fallout. How much longer, Ponytail? Bakugo roared, unleashing a massive explosion to vaporize a chunk of corrupted earth hurtling toward them. Almost there, Momo yelled back, not looking up from the device. It was starting to take shape. A complex sphere of interlocking rings, glowing with a soft, blue light, a miniature star being born in her hands. The final component, a flawless focusing crystal, formed from her palm. She slotted it into the core of the device. The interlocking rings began to spin, and the blue light intensified, letting out a steady, harmonic chime. It's ready, she shouted, her voice hoarse, her body trembling from the exertion of using her quirk to such an unprecedented degree. Rimuru heard her. He had been locked in a stalemate, his energy reserves being slowly drained by the relentless assault. He broke away, diving toward the workshop. Get it to him, Aizawa ordered. Tokiyami used Dark Shadow to snatch the glowing sphere and launch it into the air. Rimuru caught it, the device humming in his hand, perfectly synchronized with his own energy. He turned to face the Avatar, the dimensional frequency stabilizer held before him. Seal, now, anchor its frequency. Understood. Locking dimensional resonance. Locked. The device in Rimuru's hand pulsed, emitting an invisible wave of energy that washed over the Avatar. The creature shuddered, its form flickering violently. For the first time, it was anchored. It was vulnerable. Checkmate, Rimuru whispered. He poured his own energy into the device, using it as a focal point. He activated the final, most terrifying combination of his skills. He cast Absolute Severance from Uriel to isolate the Avatar's connection to its home dimension, while simultaneously using Beelzebub's soul corridor to forcibly deconstruct its very essence. There was no explosion, no cataclysmic blast. There was only a quiet, terrible unraveling. The Avatar of the Nexus Worm, the being of anti-existence, was pulled apart. Its corrupted light and impossible geometry deconstructed thread by thread, drawn into a swirling vortex in Rimuru's hand and banished from this reality. The sky cleared. The cracks in reality sealed. The oppressive silence was replaced by the morning birdsong. The rising sun washed over the ruined campus of UA High, illuminating a scene of devastation, but also of survival. In the silence that followed, as the adrenaline faded and exhaustion set in, something miraculous happened. The air in front of Rimuru shimmered, and a familiar, azure portal spun into existence. Report, Ciel's voice echoed in his mind. The massive energy expenditure from banishing the avatar has created a temporary, stable wormhole connecting to the home dimension's last known coordinates. The pathway will remain open for approximately 5 minutes. This was it, his chance to go home. To return to Tempest, to his friends, his nation, his responsibilities. Everything he had worked for. He looked into the swirling portal, and for a moment, he could almost see the forests of his kingdom. Then, he looked down. He saw the grounds of UA, scarred but standing. He saw the students of Class 1A, battered and exhausted, helping each other up. He saw Aizawa, Endeavor, and the other heroes staring at him, their expressions a mixture of awe, gratitude, and fear. And he saw Momo. She was leaning against Jiro for support, her face smudged with soot. Her body trembling with fatigue, but her eyes were locked on him. They weren't filled with fear. They shone with unwavering trust, profound relief, and an emotion so deep it needed no words. He weighed his 2 lives in his hands. The life of a king, a leader of a great nation. And the new life he had stumbled into, a life of unexpected challenges, of mentorship. And of a connection so profound it had anchored him in a way he never expected. He thought of his duty. Then he thought of her. He realized his duty was no longer to a place, but to a promise. Slowly, deliberately, he let the portal fade into nothingness. He descended to the ground, landing softly in front of Momo. The other students respectfully gave them space. The portal, she whispered, her voice barely audible. You could have gone home. Rimuru looked at her, his golden eyes filled with a warmth that seemed to light up the dawn. He reached out and gently took her hand, his thumb stroking her knuckles. Momo, he said, his voice quiet but certain. A king's home is his kingdom. And my kingdom is wherever you are. He smiled, a true, radiant smile that promised a new future. I am home. Tears welled in Momo's eyes, but this time, they were not of fear or sadness. She squeezed his hand, a silent vow passing between them. The battle was won. The world was saved, for now. The greater threat of the Nexus worm still loomed in the void, and the political landscape of their world was shattered forever. But as they stood together amidst the ruins, watching the sunrise, they knew they would face it all as one. Chapter 5 End.